Good evening. I'm Mark Halperin. Welcome to Gotham City and two-way tonight. Roll credits. All right, there are no credits for this show. Thank you for joining. Very grateful to you. Thank you for being part of the two-way experience. Jimi Hendrix would say, this program is unlike any other in our view. It is two-way, but it also emphasizes peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace, and the kind of participation you can't get anywhere besides sports talk radio in Boston. Billy on 3. What do you think of the Celtics? Tonight, we're going to talk about the confirmations in Washington, D.C., another round of back and forth where Republicans were largely supportive, Democrats, tough questions to some of the nominees. We'll talk about some of that. The fate of TikTok and the capacity you have to watch people dance in their dining rooms, their living rooms, and at shopping malls across America. That remains up in the air. We'll update you there. Donald Trump's relationship with Hollywood. We're on the precipice of Hollywood and Los Angeles joining Silicon Valley as another area of warm embrace for Donald Trump under difficult circumstances because of the fires. But nonetheless, we'll talk about the possibility that the what I call the greatest mulligan of all time will include Donald Trump having a warm relationship with Hollywood. And of course, those of you who are the least bit familiar with the psychology of Donald John Trump knows nothing would please him more than with the possible exception of attending an Anna Wintour dinner party, than having Hollywood say, you're our guy, Donald Trump. We'll talk about that. And then finally, in unsurprising news, Nancy Pelosi is not going to attend the inauguration. I may bring that back up. I said finally, two other things. You'll want to stick around. One of the things I love about our community is people stay the whole show. Unless you got to go pick the kids up or the TGIF Friday last call is taking place, generally people stay until the end. And tonight you will be rewarded with extraordinarily fine video packages prepared by my colleagues for two iconic and legendary figures who passed away: the baseball legend Bob Uecker and the extraordinary creator of cinema and television, David Lynch. Big fan of both men. You're going to want to see the packages we have about them because they bring them back to life, at least for a moment, in a way that I think you will like. So stick around for those. As always, if you're here watching on the two-way platform, you are especially privileged people. You can raise your hand and ask a question. We've had so many first-time questioners this week that I'm feeling overwhelmed with joy, but I'd like more tonight because I'm a very greedy person. So if you've never asked a question before and you'd like to get in on the conversation, please raise your hand and you will be called on as time allows. If you're watching on the platform that we call YouTube or the platform we call X, you're not eligible to ask a question. If you want to ask a question, try to figure out how to get on here. We don't make it easy for reasons I won't discuss this evening, but you are able to participate, watch, and of course you can write things in the chat. And if you do write things in the chat, only write things in the chat you would say to your mother's face, which is to say, feel free to be argumentative, as some people are with their mothers, but no smack, no personal attacks or denigration. For instance, I'm a little heavy. I know that. I got some weight to lose. I don't want to read that I'm fat in the chat. That'll upset me. No stuff like that. All right. Thank you for joining. As I said, we're going to run through some stuff and then bring in our two great guests. Our guests tonight are extraordinary. Couldn't be happier. Batya Sargon of Newsweek and Mark Caputo, who switches jobs more often than Jim Valvano. Did he switch jobs a lot? That's not who I mean. Who's the basketball coach who switched jobs a lot? Larry Brown. Mark Caputo switches jobs more often than Larry Brown, but he's settled in at Axios, where, as far as I know, he's been for several hours and no change, no plans to change. So they'll both be here to talk about it after I run through a little bit of news of the day. All right, confirmation hearings, a bunch of them. We can go into detail. We could spend 2 hours showing you highlights of what happened today, but the bottom line, or top line, depending on how you look at lines, is that these nominees are all going to be confirmed. The only one right now my sources say might not be confirmed is Tulsi Gabbard. Her hearing, I believe, or at least one of the most, was Scott Bessent, who's been nominated to be Treasury Secretary. Those of you who watch every episode of Two Way, and I know there's some of you do, and I appreciate that, have seen Scott Bessent on this platform and know that he is, whatever you think of him otherwise, a super smart guy, as Sean Spicer would say, wicked smart. And the Democrats said, you know, to the extent there's a consensus in the Democratic Party about how to deal with the loss in the last election, It's to say we need to go back to being the party of the working class, and the Republicans are vulnerable because they're a bunch of plutocrats and they want to cut taxes for the wealthy. So Scott Bessent, who's a very wealthy guy, a very successful guy in the finance world, clearly part of their strategy today was to say this guy is the poster child for the wealthy people, wealthy people in the Trump cabinet. They've had some report that suggested he cheated on his taxes, like a Thurston Howell would cheat on his taxes. Here is Scott Bessent tangling with, I would say, one of the smarter senators, Ron Wyden of Oregon. Although in this clip, you might not think that he's particularly smart, depending on your point of view. Roll, please, number 3.
There is a big effort in the Trump administration to reverse it. I think that's going to be bad for the economy, but it is going to be damn good for China because we are in an arms race on clean energy with them. Are you going to be on the side of people who want to unravel this?
Senator Wyden, just so we can frame this for everyone in the room, China will build 100 new coal plants this year. There is not a clean energy race. There is an energy race. China will build 10 nuclear plants this year. That is not solar. I am in favor of more nuclear plants. And I would note that the IRA, as scored by the CBO, is wildly out of control in terms of spending on the upside.
So that is Scott Bessent's son behind him. I believe that's his husband. I should know, but I'm pretty sure it's his husband. Here's the thing about Scott Bessent. Very genial guy until you try to steal his wallet, and then he'll knife you. You can see a little bit of it there. We're not going to take any lack of presumption of grace from Ron Wyden. There were exchanges like that with a number of the Democrats. Some of the Democrats seemed to give up at some point during the hearing and not think that this was going to be the confirmation hearing in which they win everything. Okay. Again, saving you time. Nothing that happened today is going to affect who gets confirmed. Nothing super revealing about policy. Scott Bessent got a lot of questions about China and Russia, et cetera. Tariffs. Most of what he said before, and nothing he said committed the Trump administration to any policy that would surprise you. All right. Donald Trump, as I said, wants to be beloved by Hollywood, right? And if you look at the Madison Square Garden event, it did not have the star power of Kamala Harris everyday rally because Democrats tend to have more celebrities. What's converging that opens the possibility that Donald Trump's greatest mulligan of all time could include an embrace from La La Land? Number one, the general decline of the resistance, which may allow some secret Hollywood moderates and centrists and even conservatives to come out of the woodwork. Because we all know there are people in Hollywood who don't acknowledge that they're conservative or even Trump voters, because that's not a safe thing to do at the CAA cocktail party. Number 2, the fires. Okay. They need him. And so you're going to see that. And number 2, the fires. Number 2A, the fires. We've talked on this program, on this platform. There are a lot of liberals, prominent liberals in Hollywood and in entertainment, who have started to criticize Gavin Newsom, Mayor Bass, the Democratic Party establishment as inept on the fires, and the fires deriving at least in part on the failure of liberal governance. Next, the Olympics. It was reported this morning, I believe in Axios, if I'm not mistaken, that Mr. Wasserman, who's the head of the Olympic Committee, a major Hollywood sports agent, met with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago because the Olympics will happen on Donald Trump's watch. And while that's not a Hollywood event per se, it's going to allow Donald Trump on his watch to while he's president, to go sit in Los Angeles in the presidential box and enjoy the Olympics and watch the American boys and girls win a lot of medals. So that's another reason. Next is Hollywood is a business, and the CEOs in Hollywood are going to be just as interested in sucking up to Donald Trump to make sure he doesn't come after their industries as Silicon Valley has. So today, Donald Trump posted this on Truth Social, number 4, please, showing that the interaction with Hollywood is a two-way street. Donald Trump, it is my honor to announce that Jon Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone, aka ungrumpy old men, all of whom are Hollywood figures who have been publicly associated with conservative movements in MAGA, to be special ambassadors to a great but very troubled place, Hollywood. They all serve as special envoys to me for the purpose of bringing Hollywood, which has lost much business over the last 4 years, to foreign countries, back bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. These three very talented people will be my eyes and ears and will get done. And they suggest, and I will get done what they suggest. It will again be, like the United States of America itself, the golden age of Hollywood. Embedded in that tweet is for those of you who are students of Donald Trump, like the mindset of Donald Trump, which is make Hollywood great again. I'll get credit for bringing it back. I'll be surrounded by stars. And again, you think about the star wattage in the first term compared to what this could be, big difference. And it's, I guarantee you, without having interviewed him on the topic, this is something that Donald Trump cares about. There you see, that's Rocky, Braveheart, and John Voight. Was he in a Vietnam
Deliverance?
Movie, right? Deliverance. Also, what's the Vietnam movie he's in? I don't know if Deliverance is not a feel-good movie. Anyway, those three guys are going to be his eyes and ears, but I guarantee you there's other Hollywood people. The inauguration, most of the star power is country western artists, not quite the same, but I predict you'll see more and more Hollywood people paying homage to Donald Trump, and he will love that. He will love that. I mentioned before, Nancy Pelosi not going to the inauguration. TikTok. We talked about it this morning. The development today is the Biden administration said they're not going to save the TikTok. It's going to happen. Supreme Court's probably not going to either. So it's going to be up to the Trump administration. And I continue to hear that Donald Trump's got a variety of ideas. It may be there's no art of the deal that's going to salvage this. But the idea is at some point, talks underway now. I still don't see how China's going to sell. I agree with people who say it's just hard to see China selling here. But I think Donald Trump's vision is somehow he makes a deal that's good for the American economy, good for American security, and of course, most of all, good for American teens. So we'll see. But the idea is now at some point, Donald Trump is going to propose something. And I know this. One of the things that's happening is Trump has a lot of very rich friends who want to buy TikTok. Some have been reported publicly, some have not. And I'm at liberty to say the ones that have not. But I bet you he's going to see if he can find some group. I don't think it'll be Elon Musk, and I think that wouldn't be a great idea. But friends will buy it. All right. Batya Sargon comes in to join us, as does Mark Caputo. And couldn't be more grateful to both of you for making time. There's Mark.
Oh,
there's Batya.
This thing on?
How well do you two know each other?
Through Twitter.
Through Twitter.
Through Twitter.
Interesting. Meaning you retweet each other?
Yeah,
I read all your tweets.
Yeah,
I don't
vice
know if
versa.
ever
All right.
DM. I think I've DM'd once or twice.
Mark, I called you the Larry Brown of journalism. Have you switched jobs since you were on last? Or you're still at Axios?
No, well, I mean, in fairness, NBC fired me once, so that was the only kind of involuntary dismissal I had. So, but
I don't know.
fuck those guys.
Of all the times Larry Brown switched jobs, how many times was it because he was fired, and how many times because he quit? I think it was like 50-50.
Good question. I'm a long-suffering Miami Hurricanes football fan, and so I just limit my grief to their underperforming seasons.
Okay. Batya, you a fan of Larry Brown? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I unfortunately am not a sports ball person. I really wish I was. Like I feel like it's like entree into conversation with strangers.
With men especially, right?
Yeah, and there's that bonhomie even when you're on other sides of. I should just pick a team and get into it. But I'm like, most people have that connection since childhood or to their families, and I'm like, do I just make it up? Do I just pick one randomly?
Pick Miami. I'll tell you why you should pick Miami. Number one, they're Mark's team. Number two, the logo is very good. And number three, you're not just covering sports and cheering for sports at that point. You've got drugs, you've got recruitment violations. They got it all.
Violence, sex, we got it all.
A little bit of update, thanks to our friend at the 603. Mel Gibson put out a statement in response to being named one of the president's special ambassadors. This is, I call, an instant Trump classic. Right? Here's what Mel Gibson said in response to Donald Trump's post. I got the tweet. He thinks it's a tweet. It's a truth. I got the tweet at the same time all of you, and it was just as surprised. Nevertheless, I heed the call. My duty as a citizen is to give any help and insight I can. Any chance the position comes with an ambassador's residence. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's good.
Comedian Mel Gibson.
Let's
good. Start with Hollywood, since Mel Gibson popped into my feed here. Batya, what do you think of my theory that the mulligan's going to include enhanced closeness to Hollywood for Donald J. Trump?
Well, Mark, whenever you say something, I'm always like, God, I never thought of that. And then 30 seconds later, I'm like, oh my God, that's obviously true. So like before that, I was just thinking this was like typical Trump. But then when you said that, I was like, God, that's totally going to happen. The thing that you have to understand about Hollywood is these people are utter cowards. And they're doing exactly what Mark Zuckerberg did, which is just like they got to get off the losing team and they got to do it stat. Like they can tell that the American people are sick of their vanity and their vanity morals and their posturing to some sort of like higher morality. I mean, that's what I got from the Golden Globes. It was so like filled with almost embarrassment. You know, there was like no political posturing, no political speechifying. They got the message that this is a populist moment. And when in a populist moment, the people come for the rich. And so I feel like they're kind of trying to find their footing, and in their typical like herd mentality cowardice, you're right. They're looking for an off-ramp to admit. And suddenly in a year, they're all going to be saying the stuff that they tried to cancel us for saying 3 years ago. You know, that's how it starts. Like they look for that off-ramp and then they act like it was always true.
But do you think they can really stand up to liberal Hollywood? Like most people at CIA don't want to be sucking up to Donald Trump.
Oh, I think this moment is so huge. There's such a woke lash against the crap they've been putting out on TV and in movies. Like nobody wants to see this stuff anymore. You know, this movie that did so well, that's now the subject of all these lawsuits. The Blake Lively movie with Justin Baldoni. I forget. Oh, It Ends With Us. Like this is a movie that kind of, I read the book. I couldn't get through the movie. It was terrible, but the book is really good. And it's a movie, it's a book that kind of romanticizes domestic violence, which is the kind of thing that like could never get away with 5 years ago.
The movie doesn't romanticize it. I watched it on the plane on the way back from vacation. I thought it was pretty good. Mark Caputo, you love political trivia. Name the president who's the only president with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and who's been represented by Ari Emanuel. Got to be both.
Oh, no, so it's not Reagan. I said Reagan.
It's Trump. Does Trump have a star? Did I make that up?
Does he have a star? I don't know.
No, does Trump have a star? I think he does, because I think when he won the presidency, people defaced it.
Oh, that's right.
He definitely has a star.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah,
so
they defaced it all the time.
Mark Caputo,
I heard Hollywood, and I was like Reagan.
Yeah, so. you are more familiar with Hollywood, Florida, than you are with Hollywood, California. But what do you think of the Batya other Mark theory that we're about to see a mulligan with Donald Trump in Hollywood?
I agree with Batya that they're cowards. I disagree to the extent that'll be lasting. I think a lot of the things that, you know, are kind of called woke now, or whatever, I'm going to put it in air quotes to be the unbiased journalist, right? I think those are deeply held beliefs by a lot of these folks. Don't underestimate the culture of the folks in Hollywood who are fellow intellectual, cultural travelers with the academy, so to speak, and with many in the elite media in New York and DC. So I think these very much kind of define their beliefs. One of the interesting things is a Florida-based guy that I saw with Ron DeSantis that he touched off in 2021, or pardon me, 2022 with the parental rights bill, which was misnamed the Don't Say Gay bill, was that the division between the Florida and California camps of Disney. You know, there's Disney World and Disneyland.
That's right.
It's just really interesting. One of the thoughts I had today about the Jon Voight, Mel Gibson, Stallone story. By the way, Stallone's now a Florida man, and Jon Voight appeared in Coming Home, the 1978
Thank you.
Vietnam movie. But I think his greatest work was in Anaconda with Jennifer Lopez and what was his name? Not Ice Cube, where he was just this sneering villain who was supposed to have some sort of I don't know, German accent in the middle of a jungle, but whatever. I thought this is a clever way not only for Donald Trump to troll, and to draw attention and to have three guys on the ground who command cameras and social media and mainstream media attention to find these ills, report them out, discuss problems that they encountered from a voice of someone in Hollywood. But also it's a clever way of just having like three new soldiers in the culture wars and the political wars to throw at the Karen Basses. And that would be a good way for them, possibly Republicans, to maybe gain a foothold more politically in Los Angeles, and then use that as a springboard to gain more of a foothold in California statewide, to maybe start turning some political minds and heads in the state. I ran this by a very top Trump advisor, like, nah, bullshit, he's just trolling, having a good time. So I was like, okay, well, there goes my clever theory.
Well, I got to tell you, and Bocce, I only had about a 6-hour head start on you because I thought about this morning. Mark, did you write the thing about Casey Wasserman?
I did.
I thought you did. All right. So did you know him before this?
I did not.
Okay. So Casey Wasserman is a massive Democratic fundraiser, a huge fundraiser for Hillary, huge fundraiser for Biden. He's the grandson of Lou Wasserman, the legendary Hollywood, filmmaker studio head. Okay. Casey Wasserman mostly does sports, but he's in charge of the Olympics. And if you haven't read Mark's piece, I recommend it to you. Mark got, I don't know who his source familiar with the conversation was, but I did notice he had an on-the-record interview. Mark, stay poker faced here. He did have an on-the-record communication. I think it was a statement from Casey Wasserman
from his people.
But then someone was very familiar with what went on. And I can tell you, Donald Trump loves American iconic things, and there ain't nothing more iconic in America than Hollywood. And he may be trolling, but here's the litmus test. We don't know when the Oscars are going to be because of the fires. But if you imagine the Oscars, I don't know what happened in the Oscars in 2017. I think there was a lot of resistance, right? Because Trump had been elected, they were angry. The Oscar, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump did a video statement, or if they invited him to come present the Best Picture award, he would go.
I would bet the under on that one.
I'm just saying, you could bet the under, but you can't rule it out. Because if they say we need this guy to deliver federal largesse to rebuild from the fires, we need this guy to make the Olympics great again, we need this guy to not regulate Hollywood. It's like, in order to achieve those three things, all we have to do is let him present Best Picture. And by the way, someone of Donald Trump's age doesn't call him a movie or a film. He calls them pictures, like my grandpa did. So all I'm saying is, watch this space. The greatest. When did they add color? That's an incredible innovation. I'm just telling you, this could be a bigger part psychologically of the mulligan. And finally, Mark, did you also write the story about Trump raising $250 million?
No, they're on pace to raise 500 million by June.
I mean, 500 million. You wrote that too, though, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how much of that is from Hollywood? How much of that is from Hollywood, Mark?
Good question. Some of that money's in the RNC, the Republican National Committee, the super PAC,
it's the library,
and
the library.
The library.
Yeah, Mark, just so you know, I'm not citing your stories because they're your stories. I'm citing them because you are the bard. You're the chronicler of our time. Those are two stories. All I'm saying is you can go from 500 to 750,000 if the Hollywood money flows. And if you're Casey Wasserman, Hollywood, what do you call that? Royalty, scion, what do you call it? If he's flying to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring and say, help us with the Olympics, who knows who could write a check? And
notably, when he went to go kiss the ring in Mar-a-Lago, Melania was in the room. She's not always around. And Brett Ratner, the Hollywood director who's making the Amazon movie about it, right? So, wow.
Yeah. Now, last thing I'll say is, Ari Emanuel was, of course, very close to Trump, criticized for helping, those who believe that Jeff Zucker and Ari got Trump elected president by making him bigger because he's on The Apprentice. I know, roll your eyes, people say it. Ari's phone must be ringing off the hook with people saying, how do I get to Trump? How do I get to Trump? Because they don't know how to get to Trump. All right.
So I was rolling my eyes at the idea that it was CNN. I do agree on The Apprentice, the number one media company.
No, CNN because Jeff was at NBC and did The Apprentice. Not Jeff showing his rallies live, although I don't think that was nothing either. But I was talking about The Apprentice. Boccia, what were you going to say?
Do you guys think Melania is going to get her long deprived Vogue cover?
She should. I mean, she should have gotten one her first go round. But
she should just get it on the merits. Forget that she's first lady.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I mean,
All
they
right.
refused to give it to her.
Let's talk confirmation. And Mark, I want to start with Florida man, Marco
All
Rubio.
right.
When Marco Rubio was he's the Speaker of the Florida House, right? Wasn't
He
he?
was in 2007 and 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met Marco Rubio at what's the Florida Political Press Corps has a dinner that's like the gridiron. What's that thing called?
The Prescott's.
The press, but is that what it's called? The Prescott's?
The Prescott's. I probably
All right. So
participated in that.
I met
probably on
Marco
stage.
Rubio at that dinner.
Yeah.
You know who brought me to that dinner? Then Governor Charlie Crist. And he and Rubio did not get along.
Nope.
And he wanted me to meet Marco Rubio. And he didn't say this, but I know from the staff, the premise was, wait till you meet this knucklehead who's our speaker. Okay. Now, Marco Rubio, very gracious to me that night.
Mm-hmm.
I have been besieged with emails, texts, etc., from civilians who've watched part of the hearings who said, wowza, Marco Rubio knows his stuff. And the Democratic senators have been very favorable too. Mark, what to kind of unpack what's up with Marco Rubio suddenly being like Thomas Jefferson here?
Not Thomas Jefferson. This is a great example of where the DC press corps sucks. They had decided in 2011, better said in 2010, when he first ran for the United States Senate. One of the things that DC loves to pride itself on is like, everybody from every state is a fucking rube until we weigh in on it. So they had basically decided that Rubio was a lightweight and that he was the next Sarah Palin. And they tried as hard as they could to portray him as a lightweight. Now, it probably was successful to a certain degree in that that's what they did. But he's always been a very smart, studious guy, even though he didn't go to the premier private Jesuit school here. He does have the mind of a Jesuit. The Cuban community in Miami is just, it's the Cuban American community, what we call the exile community. It's just kind of a different place to grow up. This is a place where kind of intellectual debate and politics are just in the bloodstream. They're in the atmosphere. They're in the Cuban coffee. So he's always been the combination of both show horse and workhorse. One of the things I said the other day on CNN, which I thought was interesting, is they brought up a Politico column that was written in advance of Rubio's hearing, where it was said by some unnamed diplomat, apparently a foreign diplomat, that Rubio is essentially going to be humiliated by Donald Trump because he's going to be kept in a box by Donald Trump. And there was a suggestion that Rubio's foreign policy was different than Donald Trump's. Actually, they're very much on the same page. And in many ways, Rubio's politics and foreign policy views predated Trump's that Trump has come to, specifically hardline on China and China trade, and certainly on Cuba and Latin America. During Trump 45, the first presidency of Trump, Rubio is the de facto Western Hemisphere Secretary of State for Trump.
That's right.
And helped like kind of and really shaped policy. He talked Trump at one point out of military action in Venezuela, and he was also the guy who helped write the 2017 Cuba sanctions that Biden briefly repealed or has repealed as of the day before yesterday, which Trump is just going to reinstate. Sorry, I talked too long.
That's awesome. That's great history. And again, you own the beat.
Yeah.
Bacha, what do you think of Marco Rubio generally? And if you've watched any of the hearing, what did you think?
His opening statement was incredible. It's about 6 minutes long, and I recommend everybody go and watch it because it is the exact Trump doctrine. I a little bit disagree with Mark. I think he had a big evolution on foreign policy as well as on more economic issues from a more classically neocon. Point of view, a little bit more interventionist. And I just want to read something that he said. He said, under President Trump, the top priority of the United States Department of State will be this tweet is wrong, but for every decision he makes, he said he's going to ask himself 3 questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Does it make America more prosperous? And this is the Trump doctrine. I mean, actually, Tulsi Gabbard had a really good quote as well. When it comes to terrorism, I am a hawk. When it comes to counterproductive wars of regime change, I am a dove. Trump's not an isolationist, and he's very misunderstood as an isolationist. What he is he's taking on both the kind of neoconservative, every war is our job to police the world on the one hand, but also the isolationist on the other hand, and saying, no, peace through strength. We have to portray and project strength, which prevents us from having to get involved here, but we are not afraid to get involved when it's our job. And so I just thought he handled himself so well. That speech is so perfect. It was a shot across the bow aimed at this kind of post-war international order that put America last and Americans last and all these like terrible failed wars. There was one absolutely beautiful moment. Tammy Duckworth, before she started her questions, and again, everybody look this up. It's such a beautiful moment and worth watching. She said, before I start, I want everybody to hear this story. So when she first, I think, got elected, she was breastfeeding. She had a newborn. And of course, she doesn't have, her legs were, she were blown off by an IED, I think, when she was deployed. And so she is in a wheelchair. And so she can only take one of the entrances into the Capitol and not the other one because the other one has stairs. And what she was trying to do was make a new rule so that she could make it to do her votes while also having her child with her in her wheelchair. And as she was wheeling herself in to do that, Marco Rubio came running after her and said, Senator, I'm with you. I am with you. We should absolutely do this. And it was just such a beautiful moment. She insisted on telling the story. And then he sort of piped in and said, I believe what I actually said. I think the rule she wanted to change was to be allowed to bring her baby onto the floor. And he said, I think he said, I believe what I said to you was there are already a lot of babies in there anyway, or something very funny like that. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment and really symbolized how willing the Democrats seem to be to confirm him, how happy with this choice they are. Mark, you said this morning, like he's a perfect example of how Trump didn't, everyone said he's going to pick a bunch of like total monsters, like, and he didn't pick all monsters. He picked some people that like everybody is happy with. And I think Marco Rubio is one of those people.
All right, let's play confirmation roulette. How many votes will he get for confirmation? Total votes.
Ooh.
Mark.
Oh, I would imagine only 5 Democrats are going to vote against him.
Oh my goodness. So you think 58? Pacha.
I can't do the math. I'm bad at predictions.
No, I think only
he's gonna
5
do
are going to
well
vote
with
against him.
Democrats.
Only
Yeah.
5 against him.
Correct.
Oh my
I
goodness.
think he's going to
get 95 votes.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, probably I'll get in the 80s, but yeah. I'm going to go 95. I'm going to go bullish.
95. Pacha, what do you say?
The one
95?
sticking point for the Democrats might be Ukraine. He did take a very hard line stand and said, it's time for this war to end. And the Democrats really love that war for some reason. So that might be
the correct answer is 87. 87.
Boom.
All right. Did
You
either of
heard
you
it
watch
here.
Did any of you watch any of the Scott Bessent hearing? And if you did, what are your thoughts on that? Pacha, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I defer to you.
It was very, very interesting. First of all, there was again one very beautiful moment with his son. So he is the highest appointed gay man ever to be appointed in the United States, and of course,
openly gay and nominated.
Openly gay.
Sorry for the annotation.
No, absolutely married and with 2 kids. Of course, all of the liberal groups have had nothing to say about this. The same people who were out there when Pete Buttigieg was nominated. Oh, this is historic. Had nothing to say about this, but so he sat there in front of his husband and sons. It was really beautiful. And at some point, I believe it was White House held up a copy of the Economist and said, "I want you to read this." And Bessent said, "Actually, you gave that to me when I met you in your office, and of course I read it." And so I was, and then Bessent goes, "Oh, I just, if you would allow me, I just want to point out to my sons, you see, it's very important to do your homework." And it was a very cute moment, but also like this is the future of the GOP that Trump is signaling. Like, this is who we are now. We're going to have a proud, married out gay man with children. We're going to be a welcoming place for gay families. Like, this is a very big moment, I think, in terms. So just from that point of view, from the identity politics point of view, I have more to say about the policy questions, but Mark, you want to say something? I can see you.
Just both Scott Bessent and Marco Rubio are, as in my experience, are both very involved, great dads. And I think that's fantastic. They're younger, right, than previous generations, and they're openly great dads, and not everybody is. Mark.
The only thing that struck me is like there are just times to just kind of step back and just think, they call these kind of confirmation hearings, but they're more like talkings, where and there's I can't remember which Democratic senator it was. Just this tiresome thing of like, are you going to cut Medicaid, sir? It's like he's a Treasury secretary. And during these confirmation hearings, there's this okay, we get it. You guys hate Donald Trump. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. I totally understand why people hate Donald Trump. I also understand why people like Donald Trump. But at a certain point, like, you know, you're going to have to vote these people on their merits. And if you want to, you know, say you're not going to vote for Scott Bessent because you hate Donald Trump, fine, then just do that. But don't pretend that Scott Bessent is out there with some devious plan to cut Medicaid or cut Social Security or any of that stuff.
The Democratic political strategist Taylor Swift would say, you need to calm down.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, because they want their viral Twitter clip, and that's very. But I want to say something very briefly about the interchange he had with Senator Sanders. So Bernie Sanders was sort of doing this heckling thing, like, and it was very interesting because, you know, Bernie was talking in his very Bernie way. But one of the things that's very attractive about Bessent is like he has this very sort of patrician, calm aura about him. Yep. It was a really marked difference. But so Bernie was heckling him about raising the minimum wage and you know, expanding you know, the welfare state and these taxes, you know, the tax cuts. And what you saw there was the clash not between the old GOP with its trickle-down economics, tax cuts for the rich, country clubs, free trade, versus the Democrats who are pro-labor. What you saw there was what the Democrats have become, which is a redistributionist model of how you help the lower classes, which is you raise taxes on the rich and then hand stuff out to people, versus the Trumpian economics, which is protectionist. And this is really what he stands for, which is this idea of, you know, we're going to protect the quality and the rewards for the labor of the American worker through tariffs, through controlling the border, through tax cuts for middle class people and corporate taxes that encourage corporations to hire more people and pay them better. It's just, you really saw that in that exchange between them, the clash of two models that are actually now both sort of pretty populist in nature. Like that old model of the Republican version is pretty much gone. And I think this is lost very much on the left and on the Democratic Party because they simply cannot admit that there's another model for helping the working class, and it's this protectionist model. But that is what people voted for.
That's right. One of the things that's interesting, it came up at the hearing today, the question of the fact that Scott Bessent has never served in the government before. He said, I have been involved. I have been exactly. I have been involved. Well, no, it actually came from a Republican senator who was who was pleased.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's one of the things I just hate.
Yeah, no, I know. He said he's been involved in school choice and education, but if you look at the history of Treasury secretaries who've never worked in the government before, who've been extremely successful, as Scott Bessent has in the private sector, some of them have been fantastic. A lot of them have flamed out because they don't know how to work the levers of government because it's a different beast. His performance today made me think this guy's thought a lot about how to do this. He's coming in with a real understanding of what the Treasury secretary can do.
I think there's that, but I think there's just a more fundamental thing which gets lost sometimes in these discussions, like, do you have experience or not? Fundamentally, the reason experience is important is because it is a shortcut for us to understand someone's power of leadership, which is a power of discernment, being able to make the right choices in the right way at the right time. And that's one of the things I sort of resent about this conversation, like, oh, you know, this person doesn't have extensive experience, you know, managing X, Y, and Z. And I just, I watch these hearings and you realize all of these cabinet secretaries are largely figureheads, you know, regardless of administration, and they're generally chosen, especially by Trump, to really represent him, his personality, and the direction he wants to go. The worker bees who actually get that stuff done, who put the rubber on the tire that meets the road, are your undersecretaries and those below
That's
them.
right. Yep, that's right. You two are I say this without fear of contradiction, you're two of our best and most favorite guests. And so we've talked for a ton of time, and we've got to show these two videos. So if you want to get in the conversation, raise your hand, and you're going to want to get in the conversation to talk about Bob Uecker and David Lynch. So I don't know if, Batya, do you care about Bob Uecker? Do you know who that is?
I don't know who that is.
Okay, Mark, do you care about Bob Uecker?
Just a bit outside.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. No, I know you're going to
announcer.
I know you might not like this, and I know we're deviating a bit from format, but please roll the Bob Uecker tribute video.
All the things that I've done this has always been number one, baseball. The commercials, the films, the television series. I could never wait for everything to get over to get back to baseball. I still, and this is not sour grapes by any means, still think I should have gone in as a player.
He went in the Hall of Fame as an announcer, not as a player. He was not a very good player, for those who don't get it. There's an appreciative fan in the audience.
There it is, boys. The proof is in the pudding.
The arm is back. Here he comes. 1-2. Swing and a miss. Goodbye, Detroit. Hello, New York. Hi, Raleigh Fingers. What a job he is being mobbed by his teammates as the Brewers have come from behind today to beat Detroit by a score of 2-1. You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller.
One of the most famous ads
I
of
love
all
them.
time.
These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front
Come
row.
on, come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy? He missed the tag! He missed the tag!
Mr. Baseball is with us.
Hey.
Mr. Baseball, Bob Uecker, who has a career in Major League Baseball second to none, and I mean that. He's now a broadcaster for the Milwaukee Brewers and one of the three announcers on Monday Night Baseball. Would you welcome Bob Uecker?
Yeah, you know, Melia, Jokic is a... Our clubhouse guy used to... Oh, the guy in the guy in the clubhouse is a guy that caused it. Like, if you didn't pay your dues on time or if you're a little light with a tip, like when they did your laundry,
Right.
Instead of rinsing the soap out, they'd leave the soap in there, you know? Yeah, like the next day, you know, you start running around, you start sweating a little bit, man, I'm telling you. You know,
bad.
Bubbles start coming out of your pants.
I mean, I don't even know now if I peed in my pants or if this is champagne. I don't know. I have to wait to find out.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's what that's
I
for.
don't know if I peed in my pants or if it's champagne. Well, there you go. You know.
Yeah. So
We
for
lost
those of
that.
you who,
Okay,
for
there
those
we
of
go.
you, for those of you who know who Bob Uecker is, I hope you enjoyed that as much as Mark and I did. For those of you who don't, that ad where he says, "I must be in the front row," that is one of the most famous sports beer ads in history. And as you can see, again, if you don't know who Bob Uecker is, extraordinary life, and got into the Hall of Fame as an announcer. Was not known as a great player, but just fantastic. And as you see, sitting on Tonight Show, making Mel Brooks laugh. Not every baseball player does that. Mark, you want to make any reflections on Bob Uecker?
No, I'm good to go.
Okay. All right. I love celebrating the lives of great Americans, and we're going to do one more, and then we'll open it up to questions. And if you want to reminisce about Bob Uecker or this next person, you can. David Lynch, one of the most extraordinary creative talents in film and television. For me, Twin Peaks is a seminal work, but lots of other stuff. Blue Velvet also seminal. Yeah. And he's a genius, just a genius. So he passed away as well. Here is the two-way commemoration of the life of David Lynch.
Stay alert, do your work, don't worry about the world going by. It doesn't mean that you can sit around and not do anything. You've got to get your butt in gear and do it. And don't take no for an answer. Translate those ideas to cinema or to a painting or to whatever. And figure out a way to get it done.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Would you like some pie?
Massive quantities and a glass of water, sweetheart. My socks are on fire. You remind me today of a small Mexican chihuahua.
And David has a very particular way of directing. Not just me, but everyone who works with him. And for me, he would say something like, now, Kale. And he calls me Kale. That's another story.
Okay.
Because during Dune, Dino De Laurentiis, who produced that, couldn't say Kyle, and he called me Gale. Hey, Gale. And he had spoke like that.
Sure.
David picked that up. He becomes fond of it, so now he calls me Kale.
You mustn't speak!
Gail, you come to right about here. And you come in, Tidbit.
My nickname is Tidbit since I was 16.
Okay, I love you, Tidbit. I love you, sweetie. I love you.
I just remember he said, "Cut, Tidbit. You'll have them bolting for the fire exits." I was like, oh my God. Seemingly crushed, but he was so happy. I guess I did it the way he wanted me to.
What kind of beer do you like? Heineken? Fuck that shit! Pabst Blue Ribbon!
What a heavy load Einstein must have had. Fucking morons everywhere.
Good afternoon, Mr. Roke.
Her name is Camilla Rhodes. The director doesn't want her.
Do you want him replaced?
Yes. We're freezing our ass off up here.
Ideas are so beautiful and they're so abstract, and they do exist someplace. I don't know if there's a name for it, and I think they exist like fish, and I believe that if you sit quietly like you're fishing, you will catch ideas. The real, beautiful big ones swim kind of deep down there, so you have to be very quiet and, wait for them to come along.
All right. So Chris Gordon and Noah put those together. Fantastic job, gentlemen. Boccia, you know anything about David Lynch, or are you equally unaware?
I just feel like nobody is making art like that anymore that is able to move you in a mysterious way that you don't understand. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's something about, you can't quite understand why it is having the impact on you that it's having, but it still has the impact. I just think there's no one doing that anymore. Everything today is so dull and obvious, and I don't know, I sound like a very old person.
By the way, I would really suggest, if you do like David Lynch and you do like kind of more complicated offbeat films, I would really suggest Cloud Atlas.
I will check it out.
Yeah. It's long. It's basically about metempsychosis, which is the transmigration of souls over time. It's really
all right, Mark, to tie the two legendary figures' deaths together. Every time I walk into a David Lynch movie at the cinema, you know what I say? I must be in the front row.
There you
All
go.
right. All right. I'm hoping some people have their hands up now to talk about those two guys, but maybe not. Maybe you just want to talk about Marco Rubio. David Porter, welcome in. Dave Porter, thank you for joining.
Dave.
Tell folks who don't know where you are, tell us what's on your mind, and tell us your favorite Bob Uecker story.
Not much with Bob Uecker, honestly. He was
all right.
But anyway, go Hurricanes. We got
Carson.
Sounds like we got Carson back. So
we did $4 million and his pretty girlfriend. So.
Hey, down there, it's just a couple of boat rides to get that kind of money. Anyway, I got two questions. Neither has to do with Uecker.
That's all right. That's all right.
One is, it sounded today like I heard Vivek might take that Senate seat in Ohio.
Yeah.
If it's offered,
I'm curious as to what the power play in that looks like to you guys. I don't know really what a Senate seat seems great, but he was on Doge, although that wasn't going to be long term. The second one is in Israel right now. Listening around today, it sounds like that might be precarious. They're giving up quite a bit. Got to wait 42 days to start getting hostages. I'm wondering what happens if that falls apart after they give up 1,000 prisoners.
Yeah.
And there had to have been some talks about that from Trump to Netanyahu about, here's what you're allowed to do if this falls apart. And I'd love to hear thoughts on that.
All right, so I'm going to let Bacha answer the second one. I'm going to answer the first one briefly, and then let Mark answer that, and then Bacha on Israel, Middle East. So I have not had time to do reporting on the Vivek thing, but here are two things that are true. He wants to be president. If he wants to be president, being a senator from Ohio is a better thing than anything else currently on offer. He could try to run from governor of Ohio, but handed a Senate seat is pretty good. Number two, they would like an ally in the Senate. Not that they don't have plenty, but they would like someone. I don't mean this in a denigrating way. They'd like someone who's a wholly owned subsidiary of Doge and MAGA in the White House, in the Senate, to always be there to do stuff what they needed and eyes and ears and all that. So I think those two things point to the prospect, and I agree with Mark. If he's offered it, he'll take it. Mark.
Yes. So the question is DeWine, as Republicans in Ohio will tell you.
Who's the governor?
The Governor Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio. Republicans in Ohio will tell you that if the political dynamics of the state or the nation were different, he'd be a Democrat. He's not a Trumpy Republican. Vivek Ramaswamy is not Mike DeWine's cup of tea. Now, could he still appoint Vivek? Yeah. Why? Well, one theory that's percolating out there is that the Lieutenant Governor Husted, who's a friend of DeWine's, the governor, wants to be governor. And so does Vivek.
Oh,
and one way to keep Vivek from running for governor with a Trump endorsement in Ohio against the lieutenant governor would be to get rid of Vivek and send him to the Senate. So that is some speculation, which I probably shouldn't even say, but oh, what the hell? Here we are.
Just us.
Yeah.
Can I ask you both a question? Because I have a theory about this, and I don't know if this is wishful thinking or if I'm reading too much into this, but looking at where Musk appears to be seated during the inauguration, which is along with the other very last minute additions, Zuckerberg and Bezos, meaning not anywhere closer, not with family. And now this idea of Vivek not being part of Doge anymore. To me, it seems like this H-1B fight between Steve Bannon and Elon Musk is having big repercussions. It seems like Trump is kind of backing off the Doge thing, which I think was revealed to be kind of a front for the Chinese Communist Party, to be honest, and that he's sort of finding a way to kind of like find them other things to do.
I'm sorry. I got to interrupt you. First of all, no, I don't think that's true. Second, where does the Doge Chinese Party come from?
Well, if you look at what have they accomplished so far, right, with this, the first thing they did was tank that spending bill, which the major difference between the first version of it and then the one that they got passed thanks to Doge was they got all of this language removed that would have prohibited massive investments in China. So it actually really helped China in a big way, in the way that Elon Musk frequently does behind the scenes. And then the second thing they managed to do was this whole, let's expand the H-1B visa program, which of course is a big boon for India, weakens our AI stuff going on here, our tech industry here, our workforce, right? Like, so who is benefiting from this? It's very anathema to the MAGA people that I know, to the MAGA voters that I know, and to the whole project of the Trumpian economy. And so I just think, but you think I'm totally,
did you die? Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I think you're right about the Bannon is basically going to win the H-1B fight. And the reason is that's where the base is. And when you explain it to most Americans, that's where most Americans are. So that is just an unpopular position. Now, Vivek and Musk have the same position on H-1B. I'm not sure that actually contributed to, Vivek's a possible exit from it. But I think overall, to your point, is that Doge sounds better than it's probably going to perform. Even now, you're seeing what I grew up in the Keys, in the Florida Keys, we called it crawfishing. A crawfish moves backwards. And when someone starts moving backwards and backing up, they're crawfishing. And already like Elon Musk is crawfishing over Doge. It's so long because you're not going to cut the military. You're not going to cut Medicare and Social Security. What you got left? Well, suddenly this like efficiency, budget cutting concept is out the window. Now they're talking about regulatory reform and relief. That's a little different. So that's already changing as well.
Yeah. Vivek isn't.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
Where in the Keys you grew up? I grew up in Isla Mirada.
Key West.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Vivek is not Elon, right? Elon can get away with saucy language on Twitter, on X, and not be canceled by MAGA. Vivek said some pretty spicy things, and I'm not sure being in the Senate is some safe zone, but it's different for him now with some people. Batya, could you answer the question of if this fragile deal becomes a broken deal, what happens?
First of all, many of the hostage families who are not on the first list are very worried that this whole setup is a death sentence for their family members. I don't see how you don't prioritize women and children. The barbarians came, raped your women, and stole them. Like I just think that that's something that it's like has defined civilization. Is you get the women out first. So I think it might be a death sentence for them. It's very hard to picture this lasting. There was reporting in the Israeli publication Ynet, which I haven't confirmed, was not able to confirm, but that Trump basically gave Netanyahu a kind of green light to re-enter Gaza if he needs to, as soon as this is over. When the Israeli people see these women coming back, there's going to be a lot of anger. I still think that this is a very good deal. There are not. Yahya Sinwar he was released during the Gilad Shalit hostage deal, which is why everybody is so worried about these 1,000 people. He would not have been able to hurt a single Israeli if Israel had had its eye on the southern border. Israel made a fatal error, a miscalculation. They thought the real threat was from Hezbollah, and you saw how prepared they were to take on Hezbollah. They decimated them in a week, right? So they were putting all their eggs in that basket. They thought they had neutralized Hamas. If they were just watching that border the way they should have been and tragically didn't realize they needed to be, there is nothing Yahya Sinwar could have done to hurt them. Their rockets are basically incapable of killing Israelis. I mean, they kill one every 2 years, and it's a tragedy, but they cannot actually help Israelis if Israelis simply, analog stand by that border. And tragically, they had women soldiers on the border, many of whom got killed and kidnapped. So and the other thing I'll just say is something that people don't realize. Hamas is so unpopular right now with Gazans. They are so disgusted with the way they've been shooting people and killing their own people and torturing people, stealing aid. The polling for Hamas in Gaza, you've never seen numbers in the toilet like this before. Awesome. We need to be empowering Palestinian civil society in Gaza right now. The Gulf Arab moderate states need to be getting in there right now. And I think that Witkoff's next move needs to be to go to Qatar and say, look, it's not enough. This is not enough. This is step one. We absolutely need support on the ground. How about putting out a documentary on Al Jazeera Arabic, the #1 propaganda outlet for Hamas? Just show the GoPro footage. Just show the footage that we've all seen of the atrocities they did both to Israelis and to their own people in Arabic. It would have such an amazing impact. And I think if anyone can do that, it's Witkoff and Trump.
Yeah, I'm a second generation reporter. My dad covered the 1967 war, 6-Day War, as a foreign correspondent. Was captured for a brief period of time by Palestinian terrorists at one point. That was in Beirut, however. We were talking about this over Christmas, and
Mark, I need you to be quick if you can.
Yeah, we just have a lot of doubts that we're going to see much in the way of peace. I think this deal is probably going to fall apart.
Yeah. All right. Dave, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming by. The reason I have to cut you off, Mark, is for those who need more of my content. No. I'm going to be on News Nation in 1 minute. So I'm going to hang up here and dial in there. So flip over. I say again, in all seriousness, you two are fantastic. Love having you on. Please come back regularly. Thank you all for joining. I hope you enjoyed the 2 videos. I'm sorry if you hated them because we ate up time with them, but fantastic job by my colleagues. I'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time on two-way, the morning meeting, and back here tomorrow night at 6 again. Thanks to Batya and Mark so much. Thanks to you all for tuning in. See you on News Nation in 30 seconds.